Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Tuesday, June 10th, 2025, National Herbs and Spices Day, says Google, so that's fun. And today we're going to walk on garden beds, or not, give a shout out to the woods and rotating crops in tight spaces. So let's do it. All right, well, happy Tuesday, friends. I mentioned yesterday that our weekend wasn't entirely over, and that's true. Like a cheater, I recorded that episode a day early so we could head down to the Red River Gorge, and specifically we hiked up with the kiddos to see a natural bridge at the state park. Now, Red River Gorge is famous if you're a climber. Almost no matter where I go in the country, when people learn that I'm from Kentucky, they want to talk about Red River Gorge, which is a nice change because everyone else in the world knows Kentucky for chicken or horse racing. And I'm going to do a little shameless Kentucky plug here. This love of Red River Gorge is totally earned. The gorge is just like such a cool area of our state. First off, Appalachian folks are always great, but going deep into Appalachia and finding such an eclectic group of people like climbers specifically, they're kind of their own breed for sure, mixed in with those awesome Appalachian people is just amazing. But also some of the natural formations there, like the natural bridge is just absolutely awe-inspiring. It's a bit of a hike for sure to get there, but totally worth it. I like that it's one of those unofficial wonders of the world that you actually have to earn to see it. But I also just loved this weekend being back in the woods and around the woods that much. We don't really have woods on our property anymore so much, and I definitely miss it. For years, in fact, we used to have to walk through our woods to get to our gardens every day. And for as inefficient as that was, it was nice, it was kind of like a nice breezeway of sorts to the grind of the garden, and then coming home from, being hot and tired, being able to sort of calm down and reorient by walking through the woods, maybe picking mushrooms or just like smelling the flowers. I realized hiking up to the bridge how long it had been since I'd heard, for instance, a wood thrush and its soothing R2D2 kind of like call. I remember the smells of the woods, especially right now with wildflowers blooming. I remember hunting mushrooms and how often when hiking through old woods, you would see plants you didn't recognize, interesting fungi and lichen. There's a reason why forest therapy or forest bathing, often referred to as Shinrin-yoku in Japan, where they also probably pronounce it correctly. Anyway, there is a reason that's a thing. The woods isn't just a nice place to be. It's a great place to help manage your health, both mental and physical. There have been links to studies showing improvement in things like hypertension. So also, of course, light exercise is light exercise. So that's good for you too, and being in the woods. But that's not just conjecture. There is growing scientific evidence that the woods help lower stress and could be potentially utilized for things like depression. As someone who suffered heavily from both depression and stress, I'd give 5 stars to just a good walk in the woods. But it's nice to see the scientific literature there to back it up a bit. This is also interesting to me because of how few people live anywhere near woods anymore. State parks are one of the few places we can actually, sort of engage with forests. Quoting one review of the literature, quote, "Studies have found that people living in urban areas are more likely to suffer from poorer health than people living in rural areas. Moreover, mental health disorders are more prevalent in urban populations. This is especially true for depression," end quote. We definitely need nature in our lives, but specifically we need some woods. As a species, we spent much of our evolution wrapped up in the woods. We are, in many ways, woodland creatures. We need national forests and parks, but we also need just like green space in general. There is a reason that some of the most expensive real estate in the world is currently a park. New Yorkers would flat out riot if you got rid of Central Park. And I think a big part of that is just because it makes people feel better to be in that park. I was thinking about this too, because so much of the health world focuses on things that you should or shouldn't be eating for your health. But in my opinion, not nearly enough of the environment around us is considered. We know air pollution, for instance, contributes to everything from asthma in adults and children to heart disease, to lung cancer and strokes. We know people are generally happier outdoors, and that being around water, in fact, of which there is plenty at the gorge, by the way, has been shown to be beneficial to mind and body alike. And obviously, we are seeing how forests can reduce stress and depression and potentially things like hypertension. In essence, the environment's role in our health cannot be extracted from what we eat, and the health of those sort of quote-unquote natural spaces is of equal importance to the quality of that sort of mental or physical health. To me, health advice that doesn't embrace environmentalism is just woefully incomplete. So anyway, if you're feeling down, I might recommend a national forest. And if you're feeling down near Kentucky, the Gorge has many nice hikes. Also, there is almost no cell service there, which is a nice bonus for the old brain to get away from all that for a bit. Instead, maybe bring a friend to hike with, or, your children. That's not the worst idea. Strong relationships being another thing closely associated with good long-term health, according to the 80-year Harvard study of adult development anyway. Well, I hadn't fully intended to just go down that path for the whole first segment, but here we are. So let's take a quick break. And when we come back, what constitutes a crop rotation when you can grow year-round on tight spacing? That'll make sense in a minute. BRB. Today's episode is brought to you by Precip. Precip is billed as the easiest way to keep track of rainfall, and that is true, but it is a lot more than that. Sure, you can open the app and immediately see accurate rainfall totals, but you can also save locations to see historical rainfall totals, wind speeds, and all sorts of other nerdy details. Their radar-based technology means you can ditch the rain gauge. I usually have to do that anyway because the kids find a way to smash it with a baseball bat. You can ditch the rain gauge and start tracking rain and other growing conditions all on your phone. Click the link in the show notes to find out more. Today's episode is also brought to you by Farmhand. If you're listening to this, you probably found 5 rare minutes to breathe. But what got pushed back further down the to-do list to make that happen? If it's your CSA newsletter, you're not alone. Farmhand's new newsletter builder was made for busy farmers. It automates weekly emails, drives add-on sales, and makes it easy to keep your customers in the loop without spending hours behind a screen. It launches this summer, but our listeners can request early access now. Visit farmhand.partners/no-till. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's Patreon question comes from Patreon member Dwight Yoder, who writes, quote, "Here in Mobile, Alabama, zone 9A, I grow crop progressions more than successions." Like that term. All soil is occupied all year. A typical bed would progress from corn or tomatoes to cowpeas to carrots to lettuce, or perhaps from spinach to okra, melons to butter beans to carrots. Not many things stay in the ground more than 3 months. Does this count as crop rotation? I grow so many different crops in such a relatively small space that within about 2 years, a crop needs to occupy the same place once again. By that time, 7 other crops have grown in that space, end quote. Thanks, Dwight. Great question here. And this is definitely where things get a little murky on the crop rotation front. All right, so essentially the question is, what constitutes crop rotation? Especially in a warm climate like that, where you can pretty much grow all year, the summer likely being the harder time than the winter, but also where your space is limited and you have to eventually grow the same crop family in the same space within a couple years. There is no straightforward perfect answer for this. Many, if not most, agronomists recommend a 3-year crop rotation for organic production because that is when the bulk of the soil-borne pathogens will not present the same level of concern. Some people say as many as 7 or 8, but in healthy soil, these pathogens are less of a concern. But if you have one pocket of your soil that cannot suppress said disease, then that disease could suddenly demolish your tomato crop or whatever it may be. Now, the range of other crops you were sticking in between those 2 crops, plus the warmth you were dealing with, will likely disrupt the disease potential, especially if you are also addressing fertility issues, at least with some well-made composts. Generally speaking, though, it's those sort of deeper rooted crops, the longer season crops like peppers and tomatoes that are going to be, the bigger concern because of the number of pathogenic organisms that can survive on the roots. But I would say if you were getting 2 years before rotating back into that crop and you're managing your soil well, you should be good to go there. Most tunnel growers, in fact, will tell you they have their tomatoes and cucumbers on a 2-year rotation in those beds, similar to what you're dealing with. Some don't rotate at all, which I don't really recommend for reasons we've discussed before, but mainly include a loss of yield and increase in disease potential. Over time, especially in tunnels where disease buildup can be a challenge, they may see some declines in yields. But if the soil is healthy and fertility is managed well, it is possible to keep that rotation going for many years and not have any issues. We have done it on our current farm since 2020, which isn't a huge sample size yet, but The tomatoes are back in the same bed they were 2 seasons ago and will be there 2 seasons from now. A bunch of lettuce, tomatoes, arugula, and carrot rounds will break that up for me. However, we still take precautions. This is one reason I've invested so much energy in grafting. The stock we use for the rootstock is resistant to certain soil-borne pathogens like bacterial wilt. It's not a disease we've had, but we'd also like to keep it that way. So even if our other soil-borne diseases are not present in the soil from a previous crop, the idea is that the grafted tomatoes will help reduce the risk of getting said soil-borne pathogen. Now, if we saw some huge soil-borne disease outbreaks on our tomatoes or cucumbers or whatever, we would have to change things up and rest those beds for a little bit longer. Maybe throw in a cover crop like mustard to give a little extra protection and disease suppression. Some large-scale growers, typically those that do not rotate at all, even go as far as to replace the soil in their tunnels or solarize it very heavily. I don't recommend those things in your situation, or I guess just generally, because that's not very ecological. Just that if you see some significant disease issues, you may want to have a plan ready for how to address keeping your plants safe for future plantings. Anyway, I hope that was at least somewhat helpful. We are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about walking on beds. Be right back.
Well, I left Chattanooga, boy, had $1 and a dime. Headed out for Nashville on the Hard Rock Line. I'm working on that old steamboat and learned to rob and steal. When my feet had touched dry land, how happy I did feel.
Today's episode of Growers Daily is brought to you by Peaceful Heritage Nursery. If you're looking for hardy and resilient fruit trees, berry plants, or pawpaw trees, then check out Peaceful Heritage Nursery. Peaceful Heritage Nursery LLC is a mail-order nursery shipping premium quality fruit trees and berry plants across the USA. They specialize in resilient, non-GMO plant genetics for small growers. Their diverse selection includes berries, cold hardy figs, passion fruits, gumi, mulberry, and much more. They're famous for their diverse selection of premium quality grafted pawpaw trees. 5-star Google ratings and customer testimonials attest to their commitment to excellence in quality and service. Find them at peacefulheritage.com and join the mailing list. Once again, find them at peacefulheritage.com. Use the promo code NOTILL for 10% off your first order.
Today's episode is also brought to you by FarmRaise. Still struggling with your balance sheet? Your lender's asking for a balance sheet and you're stuck with a spreadsheet mess or guessing your numbers? FarmRaise Tracks takes the stress out of farm finance. With one click, you can generate an accurate, up-to-date balance sheet that shows your assets, liabilities, and equity. No accounting degree required. You'll be ready for loan applications, tax season, or just a clearer picture of where your farm stands. Join thousands of farmers using Tracks to build stronger businesses. Get 20% off with code NOTILL20 at farmraise.com for the lifetime of your membership. All right, back to the show. All right, so I got a question from our dear No-Till Growers marketing manager, Michelle, who asked me, quote, "What's the deal with walking on freshly seeded beds? Should I be worried about compaction, or is the soil to seed contact actually good?" End quote. And this is a great question. Sometimes people see me walking on beds and videos while I'm seeding or something and say, "What are you doing? Aren't you compacting your soil?" And the thing is, no, I'm not, but also I could be. It just depends. So I don't walk on every bed all the time. It really depends on the conditions. And even then, I'm not using a bed as a walking path. One footprint here or there on dense no-till soil when it's not wet is not going to do a ton of compacting. Walking back and forth in the same place, well, that's not a great idea. A foot sinking deep into the loose tilled soil, also not great. Mulch beds are one that I don't really worry about walking over here, a little bit here or there, only because the mulch helps to spread the weight out a bit. And also sometimes the beds are almost too loose at the surface, making direct seeding actually somewhat difficult. This is probably where you see me, walking on the beds the most. It's especially true with compost mulches, where sometimes a light amount of compaction can actually do a mulched garden good. And like you said, get that seed to soil contact, even in a situation where you're using something like the Earthway that does press the seeds in a little bit. It's nice to just have a little bit of extra, oomph there to make sure that on those loose composted soil tops, that you get that good seed to soil contact. So yeah, small amount of compaction can actually do a heavily mulched garden good. And just to elaborate a little bit, what I mean with that top layer of compost doesn't always hold its moisture very well. So it actually is almost too loose to get good seed to soil contact and get that good germination. So those little footsteps actually help a little bit with that. But by and large, you don't want to walk on garden beds if you can help it. It is not generally going to be that helpful, especially, like I said, for tilled beds or wet soils or whatever. For us, I only do it when the soil conditions are right, when I want to press the seeds in the soil and cover them, and when a little compaction might be helpful to the next crop. So walking on the beds is not generally a practice I think people should embrace, but I also think you shouldn't beat yourself up over a few footsteps, and it can be used like a tool. Like it's just a tool in the toolbox. Now, if your foot sinks deep into the soil, like I said, and causes a mucky, slick footprint, then definitely do not be walking on the beds. It also just depends on the soil type and the soil conditions. All that said, it was because I knew it was fine to occasionally walk on my beds that kind of helped me to decide on 4-foot beds over 30-inch beds because, well, sometimes the nerd just doesn't feel like jumping 4 feet. So yeah, occasionally I will take a step on the beds to get over top of them. Anyway, I think that's it for this Tuesday. Let me know your thoughts, dreams, goals, soccer hot takes. It's kind of the transfer season. Lots going on there. Otherwise, don't forget No-Till Growers is now officially a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out. You can also, share it on your Instagram, Facebook page, MySpace, LiveJournal. These are all things, I think. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at no-tillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and the team at No-Till Growers. Also shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Let that one breathe for a second. Pick up a copy of the Living Soil Handbook or the Seed Farmer at no-tillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of June, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to Clara Bridges, or Claudia Bridges. I'll bet it's Clara. I have a friend named Claudia, and then I have a friend named Clara. It gets a little confusing in my brain, but very novelistic name. Okay, so as cliche as it might be, when aliens attack our awesome retirement community of farmers, the attack itself is anything but cliche. In fact, it's weirdly underwhelming. The aliens look like what you might imagine an ogre to look like. They're big but slow and kind of lumbering, and they have, they're jumping off the ships instead of being beamed down, and they have like clubs, but they're not even really good clubs. They're more like just like sticks. Anyway, some of them seem to also be getting hurt in this process. It's all a bit farcical, and the young farmers watch in both fear and curiosity, while the older farmers, they reach into their pockets and all collectively pull out a small glowing string and begin to spin it around their heads as the aliens approach. A battle is forming, and it's about to go down, but that is for tomorrow on The Photon Farmers Go to War. Was that what yesterday was? I don't remember what yesterday's was called. Probably something like that. These are all complimentary and all very creative, definitely. All right, thanks for watching and or listening. We will see you then. Bye.